This is Tom Scalen, City Council President. I call the meeting to order with the CDAC to discuss the Cdbg funds we're getting from the federal government. Lee, can you take roll call, please?
Yes, I can take roll call just for City Council. I think Steve will have to do that for the CDAC, but for City Council, Councilman Scaringi.
Present.
Councilwoman Resnetti.
Present.
Councilwoman Riley.
Present.
Councilwoman Friedman.
Present.
Councilman Burns.
Present.
Councilman Strawn.
Present.
And President Scanlon.
Present.
That's all 7 members.
All right, this is Carl Bernhardson, Chair of the CDAC. Steve, could you, actually that seems like a more efficient way to take attendance than the way we usually do it. Could you, do you have a list, Andy, that you could read through?
Sorry, I'm having to bounce between screens here. I'll just go through the people I know are on, and then I'll hit the people that I know aren't, and then we'll just see from there. So I won't be calling them any particular order. I apologize. Okay. Michelle O'Laughlin.
Here.
Brandy Brown.
Here.
Ellie Weiss.
Here.
Carl Bernhardson.
Present.
Present.
Joanne Hanrahan.
Here.
Toya Foster.
Here.
We have 4 that aren't here. I'll ask them real quickly, but I'm going to assume they're not going to respond. Brett Pornbeck, Majida Razak, Marianne Callahan, Deb Hogan. Is anyone on the line that I'm not hearing? Okay.
All right. Tom, I believe that the first, or this begins the public hearing portion of the meeting, correct?
Correct, yeah. So we can start the public hearing. Lee, however this is going to work, let us know who's on there and the name, please.
Yes, so first up, we have Rebecca Rathmel on hold. She would like to talk to you during the public hearing. So I'll put her on now.
Okay.
Oh, and we should mention to everyone who is presenting as the public, you have 5 minutes to speak. There may be questions from CDAC members or affiliated city council folks, which are limited also to 1 minute each.
Put you on for the public hearing, okay? All right.
And Lee, please formally announce the public hearing and its topic.
Okay.
And open it. Thank you.
Rebecca, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so this is a public hearing on introductory ordinance 20-47 considered in finance. It's an ordinance to amend the FY45 Cdbg budget to accept additional FY45 funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development related to the COVID-19 pandemic. So you're able to speak now.
Hi, everyone. This is Rebecca Rathmel. I'm the Street Outreach Coordinator for the Ywca here in Binghamton. Our request was outlined in the COC's recommendations and was also emailed, but I just wanted to make sure to participate in case there were any questions or comments. Just briefly, as the Street Outreach Coordinator for the Ywca, I primarily am working with our unsheltered homeless population. So when we talk about those who are homeless locally, we're talking about folks who are either sheltered and living in emergency shelters or have been placed in local hotels by Broom's Department of Social Services, or they're unsheltered and literally on the street living in locations that weren't meant for human habitation. Those folks are primarily the households and individuals that I work to provide essential services to. At this time, in light of COVID-19, these are also folks who are at an increased risk of contracting the virus and very often already have the chronic health conditions that can render the virus fatal. So as such, the Ywca is requesting $46,200 from CARES Act 2020 ESG funds in order to specifically connect unsheltered homeless individuals who are not immediately eligible for or able to access emergency assistance from Broom's Department of Social Services to local hotels in an effort to mitigate the risk of exposure to COVID-19 and prevent community outbreak. I do want to note that though emergency shelters in Binghamton have limited admissions locally in order to reduce congregate exposure, we do have several hotels who are willing to continue to accept reservations on behalf of individuals who are experiencing homelessness. So with these funds, the YWCA anticipates securing shelter for between 12 and 20 homeless persons for up to 4 weeks. Again, not only in an effort to mitigate their own health, the public health interest, but also to continue to coordinate efforts to identify a more permanent housing option on their behalf. That $46,000 would also include $4,000 for essential needs, like prepaid phones, some supplies in terms of underwear, hygiene, socks, and some food and transit passes. I do have one other comment regarding potential Cdbg allocations, but wanted to just pause in case there were. I don't know if you do questions kind of in the middle, but wanted to pause if there were any questions regarding the YWC's street outreach request first.
That's in relation to our normal allocation process, or specifically the COVID?
I'm sorry, I can't quite understand.
I'm sorry. Is that is this about specifically the CARES money that we're talking about now, or about our normal allocation process? Because we're keeping those two separate for this meeting.
I think that you were asking if we're talking about the CARES funding. This would very specifically be the CARES Act 2020.
Okay. Yes. All right.
This is Aviva. May I ask a question at this point?
We can do. Yeah, we can. Here, let's. So if that's the bulk of what you had to say, Rebecca, is that correct?
I'm sorry. Did you? I'm having a hard time kind of gathering what you're saying. That was.
Did you? Are you done with your presentation?
The for the public hearing? For ESG CARES Act funding, yeah.
Okay. I would suggest you continue on with the rest of what you had to say, and then we'll do any questions at the end of that. I did pause your time just for a second there because we had some confusion. I'm sorry.
Sure. I mean, I do just want to mention that while providing temporary emergency shelter is absolutely necessary, worth noting that doing so comes at a local cost almost 4 times that of providing permanent housing. For the folks that those of us in homeless services work with, the single greatest barrier to them having homelessness is the availability of affordable housing in the community. And we have a significant deficit of that here in Broome County for extremely low income renters. I kind of have a broad HUD estimate that identifies a deficit of 7,140 units for extremely low income renter households. But just to bring it even closer to today and up to date at hand, I'm working with 16 homeless individuals right now. I called 22 landlords this afternoon, and we'll likely call another couple dozen tomorrow. And as of today, there are 0 available rental units at extremely low income rates within the county. So if we're going to spend Cdbg funding and allocate it in light of the current crisis and use CARES Act funding that has been allocated through, my very strong recommendation would be that we're targeting permanent housing development for extremely low income households.
All right. Thank you. That's the time there.
Thank you.
Once again, I want to stress that we don't want back and forth. Any specific questions from C-Dac or City Council members?
Hi,
right.
This is Councilman Friedman. I just have a quick question, if that's okay. I'm wondering if that $46,000 figure has any administrative costs in it, or if that is only the cost of the to pay the hotels to house unsheltered people, and the other costs that you mentioned, like prepaid phones, underwear, hygiene, things like that.
And I'm sorry, who was asking the question?
Councilwoman Friedman.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Just wanted to.
And I'm sorry, I was not really able to decipher the question.
Are there any administrative costs involved or included in that $46,000 figure?
Yes. Yes. So the allowed 10% is included in that. So 4,200 was included for administrative fees.
All right. Thank you very much. All right. Do we have a next presenter for the public hearing?
I believe we'll have to hang up and see if anyone else calls.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you very much.
I would like to mention that I just heard from Mary Ann Callahan. She said that she is on and she's viewing the meeting, but she's not sure we know that she is there.
CDAC public hearing. Okay, I'll punch you into the public hearing, okay? Okay, Preston, can you hear us?
I can hear you, yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I am calling today. We recently, I want to say 2 weeks, we're coming up on week 3 of being open in coordination with the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities.
Hey, Preston, you're gonna have to speak up.
Preston was on speakerphone.
I'm sorry. So just speak up as loud as you can, okay? All right, here you go.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, everybody. So Achieve in working with the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities and our parent organization, the ARC New York, we recently opened at our Cutler Pond facility a emergency rescue services program to serve 6 counties and have a 6-county encatchment. And that would be, and we opened this program to individuals with developmental disabilities who are either diagnosed with acute COVID symptoms, but just need to, stay sheltered in place, or for individuals who have a family member, and we just need to get them away from that family member for, a maximum 2 weeks, that the family member can recover, but also know that their family member is receiving service, the continuity of care that they are expecting to receive when someone has intellectual or developmental disability. So this whole thing, the whole program included us taking our Cutler Pond facility, taking a wing of that, building negative pressure rooms, and just making sure that it was, and we implemented a 24/7 staffing pattern of highly trained staff, nurses and DSPs that are employed through us, volunteers. So what we would just ask is that the CARES Act funding would be related to particularly the cleanup after this whole thing is over, because it's going to, we currently have 1 individual on site that is COVID positive. So there's, extensive cleaning is going to be required there. And so that would be my kind of pitch right now.
Preston, I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name of the organization you're with.
I'm sorry?
I didn't catch the name of the organization you're with. I'm sorry.
One more time, I'm sorry.
Preston, what organization are you with?
Achieve.
It's Achieve. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
All right. Any clarification questions? All right.
Preston, you said 6 counties. This will be just dealing with Broome County, I'm assuming, the money that you're asking for? This is Kelly Weiss from the CDAC?
Sorry, I'm having a really hard time hearing everybody. Give me 1 second.
Carl, could you reiterate that?
Yeah, so the question was just, where is you represent 6 counties. This money is just going to be specifically for this area, correct?
Program is county and catchment, but the facility itself is at our Comic-Con site over by Binghamton.
I couldn't understand
Could you repeat that?
So the site itself is at our Cutler Pond location. It has the 6 county and catchment, but it's at our Cutler Pond location. So it's in Binghamton.
All right. Any other need for clarifications from Preston? All right.
This is Michelle. I have a question. Sorry.
Go ahead.
My question, what was the monetary amount that he was asking for Achieve?
Preston, did you hear that? Could you repeat I don't know if he had a specific amount. Did you hear the question, Preston?
I don't think he heard you.
I don't think he heard you.
First question, I don't have a specific amount as we aren't entirely sure what an excessive cleaning of this would entail at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Preston.
Thank you.
All right. Moving along.
This is Sharon Sorkin. Lee, point of order. In order to facilitate CDAC's questions during the public hearing, I know the speakerphone is in front of you. If you can help repeat either questions or answers, that would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have another caller. It's the public hearing. Yes, I'll put you through right now. Alexis, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay, you can be.
Okay. Calling from Truth Farm submitted this week a very brief one-page proposal. Admittedly, at this point, with not a lot of details, because we weren't sure what the process was for application, and we're hoping to meet with someone to see if we could talk about detailing a project. We are interested in securing 1 or 2 houses off of the Broome County tax auction property list, since the auction has been suspended indefinitely due to COVID. And we have driven around and looked at several of the properties, and it seems like there's a handful of properties in the city of Binghamton that would be suitable for housing without a lot of work to be done to the properties initially. So we would like to submit a proposal, or like to have the committee entertain a proposal from Truth Farm to obtain one of those houses from the county, and then fix the house up and have it be prepared and ready for transitional housing at this time. Truth Farm deals with a population of people who suffer from substance use disorder, and a lot of times our people are
I'm on the audio, but I'm supposed to participate web-wise.
Are recently out of incarceration treatment, and they often cannot find housing in the county. And during this situation with COVID, as Rebecca had expressed as well, we are experiencing a really difficult time housing folks. And our goal would be to use this facility currently for transitional housing, especially during the COVID situation, but eventually transition the housing to permanent housing for folks, which we have a desperate lack of. And our organization would provide support for the people who suffer from substance use disorder in order to hopefully help them rehabilitate into the community.
Thank you. Were there any specific clarification questions?
Carl, Councilman Scaringi.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well.
Could you please, thank you. Could you please relay to the caller or Lee the question? She had mentioned that there were a property or a number of properties in the city of Binghamton that the organization was looking at. Would she happen to have specific locations or addresses as to which properties those are? Thank you.
I'm not sure. Is somebody going to repeat that question, because it is literally impossible to hear what the question was.
Yes, Alexis, hi, this is Lee, the city clerk. Councilman Scaringi was asking if there were any specific properties that you were inquiring about.
There were a few that we looked at that looked appropriate. There was one on Martha Street, which is right near New Horizons, which would be appropriate, especially given its proximity to a local addiction treatment center. There's one on Birch Street and one on Vine Street. And those three properties look like, you know, they would need a little work, but not so much work that we couldn't get off the ground very quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Alexis, have you folks, since the COVID started, have you seen any uptick in heroin use or overdoses or anything like that?
Oh.
The people that would need help because of the COVID, you know, is there more because of the COVID?
Alexis, were you able to hear the question?
No, not at all. Thank you.
Okay, so Councilman Burns was asking if your organization has seen an uptick in opioid use because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We have. Unfortunately, we've seen a rise in overdose fatalities. We've seen a rise in fentanyl being added to meth. So people who are unaccustomed to having opioids are now overdosing as well. And we've had many fatalities in our county since the COVID situation. And we do believe that this is a result of a lack of support services and people feeling isolated and despondent as well. Thank you for the question.
All right. Any other need for clarification? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alexis. We'll move on to another call.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Lee, this is Sharon Sorkin again. Point of order again. If you can state the caller's name and their organization, just because the audio is cutting in and out and I want to make sure the record is clear, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is the public hearing. Okay, we'll patch you in. Okay, this is April Ramsey from the Family Enrichment Network. April, you're on the line.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yes, Family Enrichment Network currently operates an ESG-funded homeless prevention program. We're requesting over $516,438 to be exact, to assist what we anticipate to be an influx of individuals who are going to need homeless prevention services in the next couple of months. As we know, a number of individuals have been laid off. There's currently a law, and evictions are not legal. Once one is lifted, evictions will then be legal. Individuals are having a hard time, A, not getting their unemployment yet, are having the funds probably in the next couple of months to stay in their home. So the request is to assist those individuals that we anticipate will be facing homelessness, and we anticipate about 200 individuals.
This
is Councilwoman Riley.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, I was waiting for Carl.
Okay, yes. You said that Councilwoman Riley, correct?
Correct. I don't know if your speaker is done, but I point of just waiting for order.
Yeah, I was just, is the speaker finished?
April, do you have anything else?
Oh, I'm sorry, I just heard some background. So the homeless prevention services, again, is approximately 200 individuals that we, anticipate will be needing these services. The funding will support 1.5 full-time case managers, and 430,000 of those funds will be going strictly to financial assistance for individuals. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. And were there any specific technical clarifications that anybody needed?
Yes, this is Councilwoman Riley. Thank you. Can you provide some clarification of homelessness prevention for the listeners in terms of who, I know there's a percentage in terms of income and certain definitions that fall under HUD, for example. Can you define that in terms of how family enrichment provides?
April, were you able to hear that question? Okay, Councilwoman Riley was asking if you have any specific data on how the Family Enrichment Network defines
homelessness prevention.
Sure.
Specifically,
prevention services are offered to those who are facing eviction, and they've been served with an eviction notice. Does that help clear it up?
And there are income eligibility levels, correct?
I'll do it.
Eligibility requirements.
Yep, 30% AMI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
April, I have a quick question. Are there any other associated administration fees for the coming out of that? I'm just doing a little quick math and just trying to figure out, the getting from 516 to 430, 430,000 from 516. I just want to see what else we have in there that we're not calculating.
April, were you able to hear that?
I'm sorry, I was not.
Okay, so Kelly Weiss from the CDAC, she was asking if there's any other administrative fees to explain the increase.
Yeah, sure. So 1.5 staff would be hired to support this project. There is an indirect rate, federally approved 10.5% indirect rate, as well as fringe. Can I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you, April.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, April. Do we have another speaker?
Okay, April, we'll move on to another speaker now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's no one to see.
Hello, are you here for the public hearing? Your name and organization. Okay, I'll patch you in now. Okay, this is Amy Cruz, and she's from Truth Farm.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are you today? My name is Amy Cruz. I'm also with the Truth Farm organization. I just wanted to support more of what Alexis said about the temporary housing we need for people with substance use disorders. I believe some of the reasons why we've seen an increase in the overdose and the fatalities and overdoses is because of the lack of support that they have. If we were able to get housing for them, Truth Farm would be a main part of their source of support. Also, we would be working with the local organizations to make sure that they had everything they needed as far as clothing and food and medication, counseling. We have so many resources that we can give them if they are in a home where we can regularly go and talk to them. They would be able to reach out to us. We would have somebody at all times that would know how to get a hold of anybody that's in our organization. As you know, we have many volunteers that support Truth Farm and who are very compassionate for people with substance use disorder. So again, I was just calling to talk to you a little bit more and just stress how important this is. We have so many people getting out of treatment, getting out of jail that are extremely high risk of overdosing because they don't have a place to go and they're self-medicating because that homelessness is part of their stress. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Were there any specific technical questions on that? All right. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak. And please again consider our proposal that we have submitted.
All right. Thank you, Amy. We'll move on to another caller now.
Thank you.
Hello, you're here to talk during the public hearing. And what's your name? Okay, I'll patch you in. Okay, everyone, this is Tariq Abdelazim, a Binghamton resident.
Good evening. Thank you all. I would love if either at the end of this public comment process or after my call, if either the CDAC or city rep could just add clarity to the process as to what's happening with these funds from this public comment period to the council accepting the funds to then what? And what is that timeline given many of the organizations that may be seeking these funds are kind of looking for urgent assistance, and it has not been clear at all from the city's public notices and even with some email exchanges with city officials as to what's really happening and what this timeline looks like. Thank you for that. I have also submitted a written comment, so I'm not going to take the full 5 minutes. But I would just like to emphasize two things. One, there are communities all over the country that have received these care funds that have already submitted proposed uses, and that is the administration that is taking the leadership, having talked with many groups about what could be proposed uses, and then taking advantage of this expedited public process, which the HUD waiver allows, to get these funds into community and neighborhoods and our organizations as soon as possible. At the same time, the waivers for this process also apply to existing Cdbg funds that you all had approved last year and that are now itemized in the city's 2020 budget. I would just encourage CDAC to take a leadership role on that discussion. There are probably hundreds of thousands, not probably, there are hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been committed to public infrastructure projects. And I just wonder if some of those could be deemed non-essential, which would free up more resources for the immediate relief and short-term recovery efforts through the remainder of this year. One example, there was $30,000 for surveillance cameras. I don't think that's something we should be spending CDBG funds on if we could redirect those to helping those in need. My other second comment is just with this CDBG allocation, is I just strongly encourage the city and CDAC to recommend every penny goes towards needs that have been triggered and that are emerging from this COVID-19 crisis. In other words, no street improvements, no sidewalk improvements, maybe we hold off on non-essential park improvements, and we really direct these to human services. I think all of you know the other HUD waiver was on the public services cap, which is usually an entitlement community can only spend 15% of its allocation to support the nonprofits delivering critical services to our community. That has been waived. So if the city wanted, it could commit the entire 1.1 million to support nonprofits in our area. I don't know if that is the exact recommendation, but just every penny should go towards relief and recovery efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Were there any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Do you have another speaker, Lee?
Yes, we'll move on to another speaker if they call it.
All right.
Hello, you're here for the public hearing? Okay, and who is this? Okay, and what organization are you with? Okay, hold on, I'll patch you in. Okay, this is Jessica Stamen. She's with Truth Farm.
Hi, good evening. I'm actually just calling to kind of second what Alexis and Amy have said. I am a rainmaker, a Broome County resident, and I am also a community health worker with Truth Farm. My sister and I and Alexis Booth ourselves have spent numerous hours in the last month trying to find people home. They're not here. We need housing for people who are struggling and in recovery. And I just really hope that you guys will take a look at our proposal and hopefully something can be done.
Is that all?
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Carl, would you like me to move on to another caller?
Yes, let's please move on to the next call, please.
Okay. We'll have to wait a minute to see if anyone else dials in.
Okay, thank you, Lee.
Just a point, Marianne Callahan, Deb Hogan, and Brett Pornbeck are on.
Wonderful, thank you.
This is the public hearing. You're here to call in. Okay, what's your name? Okay, I'll patch you in. Okay, this is Steve Slazak, and he's also with Truth Farm.
Yep. Hello, guys. Yeah, I just was listening since the beginning. Just wanted to say, like, that I really do support the buildings, a lot owned, you know, obviously the ones that are owned by the county that are just sitting there and really doing nothing. That we could really use that space for so much good, rather than, it's like any other day. You could drive around Binghamton and see a lot of these buildings or old apartment buildings getting absolutely no use. And because of the huge substance abuse issues that we have in this area, along with the COVID on top of it, and all the things that are surfacing from the COVID, which is actually making a lot of things worse, mental health, substance abuse, the list goes on. We could definitely use one of these properties for so much good, or really multiple properties for so much good. And so I just really wanted to piggyback on a lot that was said and stress the importance of it, and of using that money and allocating it right and using it for good use.
Right. Is that all?
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were there any questions? No. Lee, if we could go on to the next caller.
Yes, I could do that. So if by chance there are no other callers, oh, hold on. Hello, this is Lee with the public hearing. Okay, Angie, what was your last name? Okay, I'll patch you in. Thanks. Okay, this is Angie Harvin with Volunteers of America.
Hi, we submitted a request for $16,000 for ESG CARES Act funds to maintain our emergency shelter for men that we operate in Binghamton. We serve 15 homeless men on any given night, and with the rise of COVID, we've had a lot of increased expenses, and we're just looking to offset those to keep the shelter operating. And I wanted to be available in case there were any questions.
So is that the end of your statement?
Yes.
Okay. Just so you know, any questions are just sort of specific technical questions based on the statement that you made. But is there any need for clarification from members present? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much for calling in.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Angie.
All right, and if we can move on to the next caller, if there is one.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, this is Lee. You're here for the public hearing. Okay. Your name? Okay. And what organization are you with? Okay. I'll patch you through. Okay, this is Susan Link, and she is from Truth Farm.
Good evening. I'm calling this evening on the proposal that Truth Farm has submitted about housing for people with substance use disorder. Currently, housing is very limited, and if you are somebody who's in current use or have a history, it's very hard to get housing. So I was just calling to support Truth Farm in their housing proposal.
And is that all?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Any need for clarification? All right. Thank you. And Lee, if we could have the next caller.
All right. Thank you, Susan. We'll move on. So I guess this is the last chance for anybody to call in. It's area code 607-772, and we have a caller, and that's 7101. Hello, this is Lee with the public hearing. What's your name? Okay, Mary Version. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is Mary Marusha, and she's with Truth Farm and the Rural Health Network.
Hello. Just a couple of things. I'm with the Rural Health Network of South Central New York, and I wanted to just reiterate a couple of things. First, that Rebecca Rasmussen said about the difficulty with finding housing right now and securing safe housing. I'm also the board president of Farm, and I know we've had several of our volunteers and our staff call in to the public hearing. But along with what Rebecca said, we too have experienced great challenges. Our community health workers have spent hours and hours on the phone with landlords trying to find places for people to stay. And as we know, people with substance use disorder have significantly more co-occurring challenges. So we would just ask that, also to reiterate what Tarek had said, like, we would really like to see all of this funding go to emergency housing opportunities for people during this pandemic, and just making sure that when we think about our population and our most vulnerable people, that those are taken into consideration. And, and I think that includes those with substance use disorder, those with disabilities, as another caller had talked about, and those who are really the most vulnerable in our communities.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right. Thank you. Lee, if we could move on to the next.
Yes. And that number again is 772-7101. Hello, you're here for the public hearing? What's your name? Okay, I'll patch you through. Okay, this is Diane Simo, and she is with Truth Farm.
I just want to reflect on and I'm going to get emotional, what our organization has done in the last month since the COVID. It's been stressed that everyone stay home. Someone that's suffering with substance use disorder, that is either getting out of the hospital, getting out of recovery, and has no place to go, doesn't have a home to go home to be safe from the COVID. Our group has been struggling finding these people, our people who are with substance use disorder, homes. The hotels are filled. Social services is sanctioning them. The sanctions by the governor, everything was supposed to be lifted. Everyone was supposed to have a place to go to. And I'm just begging you guys to please hear us. It will give these people hope. And what they need most is someone, knowing that someone cares about them, to show them some empathy. And by giving us this money, we will be even more able to help the people in recovery and be successful. That's it.
Thank you. Any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right, thank you. Any more callers, Lee?
We'll move on to the next caller. this is Lee with the public hearing. Yeah, so what organization are you with? I'll patch you through. All right, this is Amber Johnson, and she's with Citizen Action of New York.
Can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Go ahead, Amber.
Cool. So like I said, I'm Amber Johnson. I work with Citizen Action of New York, and we organize around a lot of housing justice issues, and a lot of our leaders and tenants right now, are unable to pay for their rent, or they are living in properties that are subpar. The governor is telling people to stay home, and either people don't have homes, or the homes that they live in are not good quality, or they're afraid because they'll no longer be able to afford their homes because they had their lost their job, or had a decrease in income, or one of their family members had a decrease in income. So really concentrating these funds on rent relief for the community. Using these funds on, building better quality housing that is affordable, especially affordable for, the city of Binghamton's low-income families. Making sure that people have, the resources that they need, either food or whatever. Some leaders that I've been speaking with, one lady said that she'd rather just sleep on the street than stay in that apartment that she's staying in now, and it's impossible now for her to move. So this is the reality for people. And, it was already bad before the pandemic, and now the pandemic is happening. It is increasingly bad, and we kind of concentrate funds on making sure that people have either they don't have homes, they have homes, or when they do have homes, they'll be able to afford and stay and live comfortably.
Is that the end of your statement? Is that all?
Do you have anything else?
No.
All right, thank you. Any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right, thank you very much. Lee, if we could move on to the next speaker.
Yes, thank you, Amber. Well, this is Lee with the public hearing. Okay, I will, Christy, I'll patch you into the meeting, okay? Okay, this is Christy from Truth Farm.
Hi, this is Christy from Truth Farm. I'm calling regarding the substance use disorder transitional housing. I think it's extremely important for our community, especially because people coming out of incarceration or rehabilitation are at an increased risk for relapse as well as homelessness. So I think there needs to be some sort of housing put in place for these people, and CSS just doesn't do it. So I suggest that Truth Farm be able to have their own housing for people with substance use disorder.
All right, is that all?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right, thank you. Lee, do we have another speaker?
The line is now open if one would like to call it. Hello, this is Lee with the public hearing. Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Hi, can you hear me? Yes, what is your name? Okay, and what organization are you with? Okay, I'll patch you through. Okay, this is Irene Elwood, and she's with Truth Farm.
Yes, hello. I just wanted to say that we've had a lot of problems. Well, it was like not a cold blue. We were trying to get people into a room, someplace safe, and we could not find any place. So we were going for hours, and we ended up having to take money from Truth Farm to have people have a night to stay. There's so much going on, and there's so many people that's been mentioned earlier that just have nowhere to go. And it's sad, it's pathetic. And we really need a place for people in this transitional position. We don't seem to get help where it's needed most. And that's basically all I have to say.
All right, thank you. Any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right. Lee, is there another speaker?
We'll move on. Thank you, Irene.
I have a question. This is Angela Riley again.
Go ahead, Angela. Yep.
Are we also hearing from emailed comments tonight as well?
I believe that's a question for Steve Carson.
Okay.
So the plan is after the public hearing tonight, I will compile the list of the public hearing call-ins and all the emails I've got and phone calls I've received from residents and agencies and try to compile them into a bulleted list for the mayor's office, city council, and for C-Dac to make a more specific recommendation after tonight.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
This is Michelle. I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, I just want to clarify some of these folks that have been calling in from Truth Farm and talking about folks that have no place to go, etc. Are they people that are sick? You know, not sick enough to go to the hospital? I mean, other than the substance abuse, but I mean COVID sick. Are these folks that are exhibiting symptoms of the illness and have nowhere to go? In addition to their already unfortunate situation of needing transitional housing. I'm just trying to clarify if they're sick.
Right, that's something I'm not sure about. That may be something for us to discuss when we get to our CDAC recommendation portion of the meeting. So if you want to hold on to that just until the public comment is done.
Well, this is
okay. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Sure, what's your name again? Okay, I'll patch you through. Okay, this is Amy Cruz from Truth Farm.
Hi again, I'm sorry to bother you. I just wanted to answer that woman's question. People getting out of jail or treatment or that have substance use disorder or have some of the effects of their substance use, whether they're in recovery or actively using, have a very compromised immune system. If they don't have a place to go and they're homeless, there's no place for them to sanitize their hands, their clothes. If they receive food, there's no way for them to do it safely. So we're requesting housing. So when these people do come out of jail or treatment or that are just homeless seeking recovery, we're trying to keep them as safe as possible by helping them have a comfortable place to stay where they can wash their clothes, their hands, and avoid the spread of any kind of viruses that they may be picking up on the street. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question after we're done with the phone calls.
Yeah. Does it look like there are any more phone calls, Lee?
We'll have to wait probably 60 seconds to see if anyone else calls in.
Okay.
Can I ask my question?
Lee had said we wanted to wait 60 seconds. We're 30 seconds into that. So in 30 seconds, yes.
Hello, this is Lee with the public hearing.
All right, that's a minute there. Are there any more calls?
Yes, hold on, let me patch you through.
Oh, okay.
Yes, so we have one more caller. Her name is Shelly, and I believe she said she's from Truth Farm.
Can you get a last name, Lee? It's Sharon.
Shelly, what's your last name?
Left check.
You can continue.
Hi, I'm calling on behalf of Truth Farm, and I'm calling on a little bit different level. I am a volunteer with Truth Farm, and I just want to say how much they do for everyone out there. I am a mother of a child who has died from substance use disorder, and I just want to say I wish they were around for me when my son was suffering. Especially at a time like this, we are scared ourselves. I live in a home, I'm comfortable, but for anyone who is trying to get help, it's got to be a little discerning for them, and people need hope, and I think any little bit of hope would help them go a long way. And that's all I have to say.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any specific or technical questions for the speaker? All right. Are there any other speakers, Lee?
We'll move on and see if there's anyone else that calls in.
Okay. So Joe, you had a question?
Yes. Okay, so I read the email from this afternoon, and so I just want to clarify for myself and for anybody who's listening that this procedure that we're going through tonight, so we've had a public hearing, and now you're going to vote on a budget. Are you voting on an actual budget of what to do with the money tonight? And then we're voting to accept the money, but not necessarily to approve your budget. And then it's going to go to the mayor. And I don't know if this is for Jared or for Tom or Carl or Sharon. Okay, so then it goes to the mayor, and the mayor then will do a budget based on. So you're not really approving it, but you're voting on recommendation to the mayor, and we're voting on accepting the money. So then, does City Council get another shot at the budget, or Jared, or can we work with the mayor on the budget? Our own recommendations after tonight. I mean, and is there a timeline on when the money becomes available to the people? Thank you.
Well, I think this is the public hearing, so I think we need to end the public hearing and then get into those questions.
I think that's correct. Yeah. So
okay.
Tom, I think both of our bodies should move to end the public hearing at this point. We've got
Joanne and This is Joanne, and I'll make a motion that we end the public hearing session.
All right, so there's a motion from C-Dac member to end the public hearing session. Do we have a second for that?
Deborah Hogan, second.
All right. We'll move to a vote for the C-Dac members. All those in favor of ending the public hearing?
Aye.
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 Unanimous.
Any opposition?
Oh, sorry.
All right. Any abstentions? All right, seeing none, that carries. C-Dac confirms ending the public hearing. I assume that City Council has to do the same.
Yes. City Council should take a motion.
I move that we close this period of the public comment.
You need a second?
Second.
Okay, the public hearing is closed for
We
City
need a
Council.
vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
All right. The public
All right.
hearing is closed.
Okay, so the next thing on our agenda for the evening was the CDAC meeting. Before we get into that, could Steve, Sharon, Jared, anybody with input sort of in relation to Joe's question, but just in general, describe the process of what we're about to go through so that everyone who is listening is aware.
I want to jump in there real quick. Probably the next thing to do would be the COC presentation.
Oh, correct.
Jim Hulse, the COC. I can explain to the body, the COC is required to make any recommendations that involve homelessness funding. Normally that's through ESG, but it can apply to Cdbg as well. I've already gone to the COC with the funding from HUD, asked them to look at their data, talk to their members, and the body as a whole has made a recommendation of some more specific budget funding, at least for the ESG funds. And if Jim Hulse is still on the line, he would be the one. Yes, he's still on the line. He would be the one to now be speaking. But I think you would have to invite him, Carl. So.
Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, then, so Joe, we will get to your question before we get into the CDAC discussion for our recommendation. But that's correct at this point. I would like to invite the representative from the COC to give their presentation.
Okay, thank you, Carl. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm Jim Hulse. I'm the what we call the Homeless Information Management and Coordinated Entry Administrator. I've been doing this for roughly 20 years. I've also been the COC lead in the past, worked with the city. We actually did a program similar to this in 2009, if any of you guys were around at that time, when we had the bad recession. Our systems under the COC has actually advanced since then. Back then we actually had to create the software that we needed to actually run the program. That all exists now. That's where the homeless prevention and rapid rehousing programs come from. Was that original 2009 program. This is going to be very similar to this, but it's going to be a lot harder because it's going to be a lot more people than we served back then. April actually presented from FUN. She was looking at like 200 families. We're going to be looking at thousands of families we're going to be helping with this money. It's not always about giving money. It's helping them with their budgets, et cetera, getting through this process. Right now, the federal government and the state has bought us time by locking down evictions. So they couldn't do evictions. They actually gave them $600 more per week. So people should be able to actually pay their rent right now. When this is actually going to start affect them is when that money runs out, or when we start opening up and those jobs aren't there to go back to. That's when our community is going to hurt the most. So we're not, right now, we don't know whether we're going to help them for 3 months or whether we're going to help them for 18 months. The program that we did in 2009 was actually a 3-year program. We had roughly 900,000 back then. And we helped, I think 1,720 households, which is probably roughly about probably 3,500 people, maybe 4,000. We also had a county program that runs side by side with that. It looks like we will be doing the same thing when money comes out of the state. The state's going to be about 90 days behind us with the entitlement money. So basically, like April was telling you, that it was a 30% AMI. Actually, for this program, it's 50% AMI. HUD has actually waived the 30% that we normally operate on. So we'll be able to help more households that are going to be affected by this. There is, like I said, there's initial cost to do this because we don't have all the staffing to do it with. We have just enough staffing to do our regular programs, which we have to run those programs side by side with this one. So, you know, we have the regular ESG that we have to follow through with, plus we have regular HUD CO programs that we get money directly to agencies from HUD to run housing programs. Right now, coordinated entry is not seeing an influx of a lot of people that are homeless. We're seeing about 14 that the county is putting in motels. Right now, the VOA is the only one that's actually accepting homeless people directly into the shelter right now. That's why their costs are higher than the YWCA. So the YWCA could not, we had to house in place with them because they have such a population in that building that could have been affected by the virus. So basically it got locked down. But going forward, a lot of these agencies and a lot of our businesses locally are going to need PPE to even function. But people don't understand. This isn't just, we're not just going to open the doors on the 15th and everybody go back to work. It's not going to work that way. Until we have a vaccine for this, anybody can be affected by this. And I don't think anybody actually wants it. So the COC I sent out, or Steve should have sent out to you guys through the clerk today, you know, the actual what we're supporting. We're supporting the 3 projects through the COC, the one for YWCA, the one for the VOA, and one for FEM. Does anybody have any questions? Or
Jim, I just want to apologize. I did not send that out as the agenda in the packet had already been sent out, and I thought it would be too late, but I can send it to City Council and CDAC as well. So you may want to go into more specifics.
It's pretty much what they went online with this, but it's like, this is new to FEN. They actually run the regular ESG program, which is a lot different than what this is going to be. So this is going to take a lot more case management. It's going to be a lot more time consuming. Then to give you an idea, when we fired it up in 2009, the first right off the bat, we had over 200 and some calls. So no 1 or 2 people can handle that amount. On average, coordinated entry right now handles roughly about 30, 35 calls a day. On top, we're gonna do this on top of that. So me and Steve have worked together for the past couple weeks. Once I found out this money was coming, I let Steve know it was coming. I work with HUD on a regular basis, so I know when things are gonna happen. Like I said, I've been doing it for so long. A lot of times they ask me questions. So, but if you guys have any questions about, you know, basically we're going to be looking at helping people with back rent if needed. We'll be looking at back if they need electric bills. But we're not going to go back 6 months and pay a $6,000 electric bill because somebody didn't pay it. So, you know, it has to be the virus or, you know, something that's happened because of the virus. We're not, like I said, again, we're not seeing a lot of people on the street. Rebecca's identified 13. That would be on average on any given night in Broome County, we average about 10 people being home. So, and they're usually at known locations. So we have addressed, me and Steve have been meeting weekly with Fenn. We have addressed on how we're going to handle them coming out of the jail. We've already started a pilot program when it was started, before this started happening, where we actually coordinated entry actually goes in with legal aid into the city eviction courts, and we work with the judges in helping people keep their housing. So we would follow through with that under this program. So we would be there if they have to go to eviction court. So, but New York State last year passed different laws for eviction. So there's a long process that has to happen before somebody can be evicted. So it gives us almost 30 days to help somebody. A judge can actually give them an extra 30 days. So we can get upwards of 60 days to help somebody before, they would actually be evicted. So, are there any questions or?
Carl?
Yes,
This is
Deborah.
Deborah Hogan. I have a question.
Go ahead.
If James could briefly review the memo or email he sent to Steve, it might be helpful. Reason being, it seems like they have been meeting, so it would help us get up to speed.
Yeah.
Okay.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, you just sent that email out to us now, correct?
Correct, I did. And I mean, there's several programs the COC is making a recommendation on. It gets a little detailed in there, but also understand, and you can still talk about this, but you're not voting or approving anything on the COCs or ESG recommendations tonight.
Correct. They're just presenting them. So, but yeah, if James, correct, if you had anything more that you wanted to point out from there.
They basically, the three agencies were on and actually presented their programs. I just wanted to clarify a couple. Like I clarified that, like, Fenn doesn't understand we're going to be serving thousands of people here, not just 200. Normally with the little bit of ESG that we get, we can help roughly about 75 families. This is a lot different. So there's a lot more to this. There's a lot more case management involved in it. So I will be training them in how to do that going forward. So we've actually set this, we've talked because we have to set this process up so that we can work remotely if we have to, because we may not be able to meet with people. So we've designed software where we can actually get documents from clients and stuff just by their phone, or they can take a snapshot and send it to us through a secured thing, and we're keeping everything HIPAA compliant. So so we're in very good shape when this happened. Our COC is a lot farther ahead than the majority of COCs in what we do. So
all right, Deborah, did that help clarify?
Carl and James, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I'm reading Steve's email currently.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, and is that all, James?
Yep, that's all I have. So
okay, so Steve, Lee, if I'm correct, now we would move on to the CDAC meeting portion of the evening, correct?
Correct, I believe. Did you finish all questions that you wanted?
I believe so. Were there any other questions for James? Okay, yes, we have.
Okay, I'm going to take off and let you guys do your work then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so my understanding now is that we need to essentially begin a CDAC meeting, attendance and all at this point. Is that correct?
You've already done attendance, so this will just be a regular CDAC meeting, and you're going to be working on that preliminary budget, which is just accepting the HUD funds and making a recommendation to council regarding that.
Okay.
All right, so, and we have 7 members in attendance, correct, at least?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so I guess we'll open discussion among C-Dac members about how we would like to structure our recommendation. I'd like to say that it seems, actually, you know what, before we do that, could I ask Steve or Sharon, just, well, I guess specifically Steve, would you just go over what is, because we had a number of communications from Corporation Counsel today. Could we just have a, how do I put this, an overview of what it is that we're expected to do right now?
Actually, that might be a Sharon question. Are you?
This is Sharon. Yeah, I'll take that for now, and then if there's CDAC specific questions, you can ask Steve. So as everyone, sure, as everyone is aware, HUD awarded about 1.1 to the city in community development block grants and 57 or so K in emergency shelter grants to address needs specifically caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. So to accept and initially allocate those funds, HUD said, yes, go through an expedited process, right? So that's what we're doing right now because we need to accept those funds in order to allocate them, which requires a Cdbg budget amendment because it's an increase in revenue, but it's also an increase in expense, okay? So this process was to review and essentially propose an amendment to the Cdbg budget. I can't compel, nor can the city compel CDAC to make specific recommendations. It's the mayor's proposal that these be accepted whole scale so that we can begin discussions with regards to allocations. With regards to whether or not a nonprofit, Chodo, or any of those organizations that have made presentations tonight, either during the public hearing process or afterwards, the city isn't going to engage in agreement with any of them with regards to the allocation of those funds. That's going to come back before city council. So I think what Steve envisioned in discussion with some of the membership of CDAC was that after this meeting, he would send out more detailed information with regards to the applications various nonprofits or eligible organizations either under CDBG or ESG. And then CDAC could make additional recommendations to City Council with regards to those allocations. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you. So to boil that down, basically, we are at this time just recommending that we accept the money. What's that? Oh, someone's laughing. I'm sorry. We're just recommend, the goal is to recommend that we accept the money and that we then continue to make recommendations as to how it's spent as we get more information throughout this ongoing crisis. Is that a good summarization, do you feel?
Yes, I would say it's kind of 3 parts. Accept the money, that you would recommend accepting the money. 2, recommending accepting or passing an amendment to the CDBG budget that would reflect that. And then any other recommendations that CDAC would like to make at this time based off of the information that it has. We understand that this is not, this is an expedited process, but we are trying to do it as efficiently as possible.
Now, just to get some clarification on the amendment, is there any, I guess, recommendation on how that should be worded?
Carl, can I jump in?
The second part. Yeah, yes, thank you, Steve.
I'd like to, if I could, go over exactly what the money is, any caps that are there, and any limitations there are, and then you're not really there is an RL written, but you're not making any response to that RL directly. You're just kind of making a presentation to City Council in general on how you would like these funds spent. Hope that makes sense.
It does. Thank you, Steve.
Okay,
So
so
go ahead.
Let me know when I can start with the sort of spiel.
If you could start now, that would be great.
Okay. All right. So From HUD, we are getting $1,140,260 in Cdbg COVID funds. Funds must be something that is Cdbg eligible, and they must be for something that is directly or somehow related, provably related to the COVID crisis. People that were having some problem before COVID hit are not eligible for these funds now unless COVID somehow exacerbated that situation, and even then COVID would only be able to be used for the exacerbation. The only cap, generally CDBG funds are capped. Tarek did indicate that there is no cap on these now, and he is correct. There is no cap on service funds. There is still the 20% admin cap. The admin cap for that would be $228,052. So that's that current situation with the CDBG. Does anybody have any questions on exactly how the CDBG funds can be utilized or anything like that?
I do have a question, Steve. If we see that we've got a cap on something that's closer meeting the cap, but then the amount of services that the amount of administrative services aren't as many as maybe, it seems like a high pay rate for FENS cap for 1.5 new employees or administrative people to put in there, where I think that the need's going to be more at what, $86,413 for 1.5 staff. Do we have any control over that to, you know, to say they had a little bit more that they could have asked for, but it seems like they need more workers? Is there anything in our hands on that?
That'll be specifically when you go to fund for making a funding request for specific programs. I can tell you that their admin does not affect the admin cap. When I say admin cap, that only applies to the entitlement community, which is us. So that's the admin cap the city would utilize to administer these funds. It wouldn't have any effect on administrative costs.
Okay.
But once it gets down to it, you can always make a recommendation that's smaller than the amount they've requested, and to city council. Now, whether city council will then will be able to pass that on is something else. That's kind of always been a great question, as to how far along recommendations can go of individual program lines.
Yeah.
But
certainly it wasn't about making it smaller, it was just, you know, how it was utilized. But thank you.
Shall I go on to ESG, or did you guys want to vote on CDBG?
I say let's vote on the CDBG, as long as we know that we just need to make a motion to accept the $1,140,260 for COVID for CDBG with a 20% admin cap. Is that what we need to say?
That's correct.
Yeah, right? I think you're basically saying the reason we like to put I like to put the cap in the budget is to make sure you never go over it. So that's one of the things there, is that's a way of making sure we don't ever violate those rules. So you're accepting the money and then approving it to admin versus non-admin costs.
Okay, so what I just said, is that acceptable as a motion?
I believe that it is. Yeah. Is it seconded by anybody?
I second it.
Seconded by Kelly Weiss.
Kelly Weiss.
Carl,
did you didn't do it? Oh, did you want to do you want to do the 20% admin cap?
Yep. Steve.
As part of that motion, correct. Yep.
Steve and Carl, this is Deborah. If we're opening discussion for this motion, my concern is about the 20% admin, if that can be lowered, and if there's any idea of how long this is going to be administered. The reason I ask is because Mayor David had initiated the economic development is now recovery through the end of his term. So what are we looking at for a time frame for these special funds? For me, that affects the admin percentage.
Technically, the funds have to be spent by September 2022. However, the reality is it's very likely we'll spend them far sooner.
Okay, but Steve, when I made the motion, I was just saying that according to the rules, the admin cap is 20%. I didn't mean that we were going to give them the 20%. It's just that we're going to accept the money with the understanding that it has to be for the CDBG, it's for COVID, and it has to have at least a 20% cap. I'm not saying we're gonna spend 20%.
You
Does that
guys
make
will-
sense?
The understanding of a cap, if that's correct, right?
You shouldn't exceed the cap. You should say a number, but it can't exceed the cap.
Okay. Okay, so we do need a specific number for admin.
We do?
I guess so.
Yes,
Is that correct, Steve?
Yes, please.
Okay. Well, so we have a motion out there that's been seconded that only said 20%. Do we need to amend that, correct? Then to have a specific number?
Procedurally, I'm not sure.
I guess that would be a question then for
Deborah?
My question for discussion,
oh, sorry.
my question, if we can accept the funds and then come back with a second motion and vote for the percentage, if that makes it cleaner.
Okay.
Can you repeat that?
Would make sense. I don't see why we couldn't do that. So yeah, so we actually have a motion on the floor right now to accept the funds and impose the 20% cap. So we have to act on that. Unless anyone who put forward the motion or seconded it wanted to rescind their motion or second so that we can change that.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know if we need the 20%. I'm just saying, we don't want to go over the 20. So now if you're telling us we have to come up with a certain percentage of what we're not going to spend in admin, then I'm at a loss because I don't know what the admin is going to need in order to give out this $1 million. So I guess that's going to be the decision now, and we're going to be here for a while figuring that out.
Right. Well, I think and if Steve or Sharon or anybody other wants to correct me, I think the best way then to word that would be to say we want to accept the money at the amount that is available, and admin is not to exceed the whatever the 20% figure ends up being, if that makes sense. I don't know if
That's what I was trying to say, is that not to exceed 20% admin.
Okay. So let's just, since we do have a motion on the floor that was perhaps not worded the way that we want it worded, let's have a vote on that very quickly, just to get that potentially out of the way.
Well, I can just withdraw the motion and then you guys can come up with whatever, but that was my point, not to exceed the 20% cap.
Okay, yeah, let's, so thank you. So Joanne's withdrawing that motion. I guess we would entertain another motion, if there's one out there along the lines that we just discussed.
Real quick before you guys go on, Sharon, can they make a recommendation that's a not to exceed amount?
Yes, they can. I would also recommend that Ms. Weiss withdraw her second so that the matter is no longer officially on the table.
Thank you, Sharon. I withdraw my second. This is Kelly Weiss.
Thank you, Kelly. Okay, let's see. 20%, if we were to calculate it, let me just pull the calculator so that, or Steve, did you have the numbers calculated for the percentages already? I think you read those into the.
Yes, 20% of the 1.1 and change is $228,052. And just for the record, currently we spend 11.4% on admin under normal Cdbg.
So, are there any motions out there for recommendations for the CDBG? Or, well, I'm sorry, Deborah, to go back to your point. You had suggested that we take these as two separate motions, correct?
I think it might be easier and quicker.
All right. That being said, did you have any motions that you wanted to make?
I, Deborah Hogan, make a motion to accept the full funds for recommendation from HUD to the city of Binghamton.
I second that motion. Kelly Weiss?
All right.
Do we have to
Is
say
there
that
any
it's
opposition?
1,140,260, or can we just say the full funds?
I believe we have to say technically the amount.
I'll say it, $1,140,260 in CDBG funds.
Thank you.
All right. Is all those in favor of recommending that the city of Binghamton accept $1,140,260 in CDBG funds?
Aye.
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 All those
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so it carries that CDAC recommends that the city of Binghamton accept $1,140,260 in CDBG funding. Are there any other motions about, yeah.
We have to figure out how to word the percentage.
Yes.
Do you have any suggestions, Carl?
So I think it was.
I'm sorry, Carl, to interrupt you. Point of order.
Oh, no, don't worry.
You know, at this point, the discussion is open for the board with regards to percentages, and I would recommend having that discussion before the motion, just to make sure you guys are on the same page.
That's a good idea. Thank you very much. So yeah, let's discuss the percent that we would recommend of that funding be spent on administration costs. So it's capped at 20%. Do we want to do we could do a not to exceed the 20% if people want it to be less than that. There's been discussion about that. Those numbers should be thrown out. We should, what percentage do we want to see that? I am personally in favor of saying not to exceed the figure that is 20%, because that gives them the most leeway. And in the end, this is a recommendation and not any kind of binding action for them. But if people have other points that they'd like to make heard about that, now would be the time to do it.
This is Michelle. I have a question.
Go ahead.
What was the percentage in the past? Did they say 11.9%?
11.4.
Yeah, 11.4 is our current CDBG admin for the year.
So would you think that it should be somewhere in that ballpark so that it doesn't go as high as the 20%? So it would remain on the lower end?
It might seem that we might have doing things a little bit quicker might come into some more extensive admin costs. If, in doing things a little bit, doing them quicker might be a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, that's sort of my thought as well. And that by giving them a not to exceed recommendation, we're making the point that we would like to see this administered as quickly and capably as possible, rather than sort of hemming them in on the normal amount that it costs when we're not in an emergency, especially when they're considering having to hire new people to administer these funds. So I guess that's
okay. It was just a question.
Yes.
Carl, this is Deborah. I was just uncomfortable with the 20% making you want to get the most use out of the funds available. So I was just uncomfortable with 20 and wasn't sure if we could consider something like 15.
Right. I don't think that's unreasonable if we wanted to sort of find a point in the middle for our recommendation. And once again, we are making a recommendation. They're going to be able to do what they like with it. And if we wanted to recommend it at 15, that at least says there's an understanding that this may cost more than usual, but try to put as much of the funding into program costs as possible. So I certainly understand that sentiment.
Carl, can you hear
yes,
me?
I do.
The premise is that we are allowing the city to determine how much they're going to be spending, and it is not to exceed 20 or 20%. So by saying that, we're going to trust that the city knows what it needs to spend up to 20%. Is that not right? So it's a very simple motion.
That certainly
We have
would be.
to trust the city because we have no control over what they spend.
But ultimately, we do have no
To the
control.
cap, up to the cap. So why not just say not to exceed the cap?
Yeah.
Rather than putting a number on it that we don't really know if it's a feasible number.
I think Jared has a question.
Yeah,
I think Jared has
just,
a point.
for CDAC, the current proposal as submitted to council is for CDBG, a $1.1 million federal aid, only 57,000 being admin costs, which is, in the single digits. So as far as city council is concerned tonight, that's the number that the admin will be. Any change to that would have to go back to city council. So I think it's very laudable that CDAC wants to ensure that as much money is heading into the community as possible. Just know from our standpoint, you're talking about 20%, 15%. We were in the single digits. So, we're being as aggressive as possible. And that recommendation may not be, because everything has to go back to council, as critically important as the just accepting of the money.
That's true.
So Carl, if what Jared says is true, then it makes my point. We can trust the city to spend only the amount of money they need, up to 20%.
All right. So I think
So a motion like that, yeah,
perfect,
pleases everybody, doesn't it?
All right.
Agreed, Marion.
Yep. So would you like to make a motion in along those lines, Marianne?
I would like to make a motion that we would approve admin costs not to exceed 20% for the COVID funding.
All right. Is there a second?
I second it. Joanne.
Second from Joanne. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there
any
opposition? Okay. Any abstentions? All right, it carries. So moving on to ESG. The amount is $577,638, and the funds are capped at 10%. Given the discussion that we just had, it seems like it might make sense to just do a combined motion to accept that funding with not to exceed the cap. Does anyone have anything they'd like to say about that?
Do you mind if I do my
Otherwise-
spiel on that, Carl?
Oh yeah, of course. Go ahead, Steve.
Okay. So the money we're receiving, like you said, is 507. I just lost it. The amount you said, it's capped at 10%. Normally with ESG, there's a cap on emergency shelter and street outreach. That is not the case here. These funds specifically had the cap on the street outreach and emergency shelter lifted. Otherwise, I would be asking you guys to make a recommendation on the capping of that. So they're much more freer with these funds than they are in the past. There's also no matching requirement, which is a standard requirement for any use of ESG funds. But exactly like the CDBG, you may not use these funds for anything except something that is related to COVID. It has to be provably related to COVID. The COC has already looked at these funds and has made a recommendation, which Jim talked about, and you guys have to email them out for specific programs, but at this point, it's still just the acceptance vote. So
okay,
that's all I got.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
That being said, are there any is there any discussion? Any motions?
I motion to approve the funds that are delegated. I don't have the number right in front of me. I wrote it down.
It's 577,638.
Yes, including the cap.
I second the motion.
Well, what's the cap?
It was 10%. So to
10%.
repeat that, the motion is to accept for the city of Binghamton to recommend for CDAC to recommend that the city of Binghamton accept $577,638 in ESG funds with administrative costs not to exceed 10% of that amount.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay.
I second that, Deborah Hogan.
Who was
okay, so it was Kelly Weiss, and it was seconded by Deborah Hogan. Is there, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? All right, that motion carries unanimously.
So
now I guess the next thing would be, oh, go ahead, Steve.
I was going to say, so Sharon, correct me if I think we talked about this earlier. Normally, the chair would then have to present to the city council the recommendations. Are we acceptable? Is this them having viewed the entire thing? Is that acceptable?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to double check. Okay, thank you.
All right. Were there any other recommendations that we wanted to make to City Council? Okay. So we will, of course, continue to look at this and specific requests and can continue to make recommendations. And any members of the public who are watching, I encourage you to reach out to either CDAC members or people on City Council to make your thoughts heard and known. But otherwise, I think that's it for business for this CDAC meeting. And it would make sense if anybody wanted to motion to adjourn it.
Carl, I actually have a quick question, and it was about making sure that we get the timeline and some urgency on this. We had definitely talked in our last meeting that we would be available as CDAC to meet more frequently or do things that. And so I think if we can confirm that and just speak to that for a minute.
That's true. That's a good point, Kelly. We should talk about when is our next scheduled meeting? That's
the second public hearing.
Okay.
I think it's May 11th.
Okay. It may make sense for us to schedule a meeting to discuss recommendations based on information that specific recommendations based on what we've heard sometime before that second public hearing. Is that something that we should work out right now, or is that something we could do over email and set a meeting somewhere in between now and the 11th?
You guys can probably work this out over email.
Okay, that makes sense. But we're just sort of generally under the consensus that we should have another meeting. Actually, yeah, we should have another meeting between now and the public hearing to discuss specific details for recommendations on funding.
Oh, for COVID?
That would be nice.
That's what we meant, Kelly, about COVID, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
How
I was already
that
planning on that. Yeah.
What's that?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Is that something we need to make a motion on?
No. We'll discuss it by email.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Kelly. Okay. Anything else? All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. If anyone has one.
I second it.
Oh, I would need someone to make it.
Second it.
Who said
I'll
that?
make a motion. I think that was Majito.
Oh, Majito's on? Okay.
Yeah, I've been on all along when the road.
Okay, I didn't know. Sorry, I apologize.
Oh, let's make sure that the records indicate that Majida was present and is present.
Majida?
Who made the
Yes.
motion to adjourn?
Yeah, who made the motion? I actually didn't hear.
Well, I guess I'll make
make
the
a motion
motion, or Majida can make the
I
motion. And I'll
second
second it. Okay, I'll make the motion. Latoya Foster.
Latoya makes, okay, Latoya's
I
motioning for
second
adjournment
it.
and Majida is seconding. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, do we do second amendments?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll do roll call in a second.
Okay. All right, any opposition? All right. We'll do final roll call. Steve, could you read through the list of attendees?
Absolutely. Michelle O'Loughlin,
Here.
Brandy Brown,
Here.
Kelly Weiss,
Here, present.
Carl Bernhardson,
Present.
Joanne Hanrahan,
Here.
Latoya Foster,
Here.
Marianne Callahan,
Here.
Deborah Hogan,
Present.
Brett Pornbeck, was there? Majida Razak.
Here.
Okay. All right. Well, we didn't get Brett, but he may have had to leave.
Point of order, I'm sorry, this is Sharon. Is anybody who just said present, was anybody not here for those votes? There were 3. Okay, I'll take the silence as a no. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Sharon. All right, well, that's, we're adjourned. I guess I'll turn it over to City Council.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
job.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Lee, what do we do now?
Okay, so now I believe we can introduce the legislation ordinance 20-47.
Okay.
I have a question. This is Aviva.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Okay, is it okay if I ask a question now?
I believe so.
Okay, so I didn't know if this was the appropriate time in the meeting. So are we, now we are voting on only to accept the money, or are we including that 20% administration cap as well?
Aviva, it's Jared. You're voting on the grant and budget as presented in the RL that shows the total amount and then the carve out for admin. So CDAC, what they just did was simply just a recommendation. Believe me, it's just a recommendation. So that the admin funding that was already presented as part of the RL would be what you'd be voting on.
Thank you for that clarification, Jared. This is Angela Riley. I sent a message to Steve. Fringe, I needed clarification on. Is that included in the administration fees, or is that part of the grant funding? Do we know?
You're talking about so admin funds only covered the city of Binghamton's administration costs, but that would include fringe and all other benefits that are attached to that.
Okay, even for the separate entity as well, or just
No.
Okay,
Just
got
city
it.
of Binghamton.
Thank you.
And to answer your question in a different way, Aviva, the council cannot exceed that cap under any circumstance. So when they put in language that said not to exceed 20% or not to exceed the cap, we don't have to then clarify it in this particular resolution or in what's before you, because we're not permitted to expend it in that way. And the way that the revenue and expense lines, you're just voting on the proposed resolution before you tonight.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
It's only 5%. It's only 5%, right? If I'm looking at it right?
That's correct.
Yeah, nobody could complain. That's pretty good.
And then, can I talk?
Sure, Joe.
Okay, and then Jared, what is the procedure then with, okay, they recommend, then the mayor is going to come up with a budget. Do we then approve that budget? Do we vote on that budget? Or how does that work?
Basically, what'll happen next is the recommendations will continue to come in from the CDAC. Recommendations will continue to come in from the COC. I have not seen those numbers yet. It sounds like they were emailed late today. And then any agency expenditures, money to the YWCA, money to Family Enrichment, money to Food Bank of X, would go back to City Council for approval as an agreement between the city and the outside agencies. In addition to that, separately, if any council members have specific programs that their constituents have been talking about, that they have an interest in funding with this money, let us know in the mayor's office. Let the Office of Economic Recovery, Paul Nelson, we set up a meeting with him to outline what's eligible Cdbg, what's eligible ESG, because this money is not going to be spent in a one-day period. It's going to be spent over the course of this recovery. We want to get the money out as quickly as possible. So that would be the process, but no money will go to an agency without going to City Council.
Sharon, it just looks like we've lost Tom. I just want to call that to Lee's attention.
Yeah, it looks like he's not in the queue, but it looks like he just joined back in. Tom, can you hear us? Are you still here? Okay, it looks like he may have left us.
Hey Lee, it's Matt. Yeah, it looks like we just lost him again.
Okay.
Oh, there he is again. He must
We
just
have
be
quorum, so continue. And essentially right now, procedurally, council's having a discussion on the recommendation CDAC has. There's no introductory resolution that has been introduced yet.
Joe, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. Yes, thank you.
Okay. So Sophia, I think you may be in charge now if you'd want to move to the agenda if there's any additional discussion.
Sophia, I
Can
think
you
you have
guys-
to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I thought I heard Tom was back. No? Okay. So any questions, comments, anything else?
Lee, why don't you read the introductory ordinance from tonight's agenda, identify where we are in the agenda, and then whoever's the chair of that committee will stand and ask for unanimous consideration as we always do.
Yes, so according to your agenda, we're on item number 6, which is first read of legislation, introductory ordinance 20-47. It's the only legislation on your agenda, and it's considered in finance with Councilmember Strawn.
Okay, thank you, Mr. City Clerk. I ask for unanimous consideration of introductory ordinance 20-47.
Second.
Second.
An ordinance to amend the FY45 CDBG budget to accept additional FY45 funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Comments or questions?
Call the question, Madam Chair.
Question been called.
Okay, Councilman Scaringi,
Aye.
Councilwoman Rosnetti,
Aye.
Councilwoman Riley,
Aye.
Councilwoman Friedman,
Aye.
Councilman Burns,
Aye.
Councilman Strawn,
Aye.
and President Scanlon, are you with us? I'll mark him absent. So that's 6 ayes, 1 absent Scanlon.
Okay, so I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam President.